Thank you very much, councillors, senior staff, members of the gallery, distinguished members of the gallery, members of the press. Warm welcome to the main meeting of Temora Shire Council, and I declare the meeting open. I advise that this meeting is being recorded and will be placed on Temora Shire Council's webpage for public information, and all present today are reminded that while speaking you are agreeing to your view of comments being recorded and published. You're also reminded that if or when we are speaking, to of course be respectful of others and using the appropriate language. Temora Shire Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures during this council meeting, which of course doesn't happen here at Temora Shire. Now, I would like to now call on Mr. Bill McCauley, who is representing the Temora Christian leaders today, to please deliver our opening prayer. Thank you, Mr. McCauley. There is a microphone on the lectern. If you just press the button.
I think my voice is loud enough that I wouldn't have to on the bottom.
Should be a button on the
bottom.
Down the bottom.
On the base. Just press that one down. The center.
There we are.
That's how. I try to keep myself off the air as long as I possibly can. It'll only be a fairly rush one, this one. I only received news on Tuesday morning that I was asked if I could fill in for somebody. And then I went out and saw Rick and told him, well, I offered to do it, but I had commitments over and on again this morning, and you never know when you're going to get back. But we did get back in time, Rick, so I did make some sort of effort and wrote up a little bit of the schedule to try and get by.
Thank you.
So before we start, we'll just say our prayers and invite our Lord to be part amongst us. Lord God, our Heavenly Father, it is right to give you thanks and praise at all times and in all places. Lord, you have always been there first to be invited to all our local monthly council meetings. And I often wonder how many times you have answered our prayers and how many times have we come to thank you for answering our prayers. May we now give you the thanks for the rain that we've had over the last few months, 15 months as I have here, and for the wonderful harvest that most of our farmers have received. You certainly have answered their prayers in that regard. And we pray for our local elected council. They are facing a heavy workload at this present time, and they also are facing upcoming council elections later in the year. The council has always worked on a balanced budget. Well done, councillors, and we continue to pray for our local police force who continue to protect our local town and communities. Temora has been called the friendliest place in New South Wales, and we don't want that to change, do we? We bring these things to your attention, Lord. This day might be right for the ones to benefit in our local community, and we ask all these things in your name, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Mr. McCauley. Always a good way to commence our meeting, so thank you for making the time to be here. Councillors, apologies. We have the General Manager, who is an apology, and our Acting General Manager will step up, and we thank you for that. So someone please move that the apology. Thank you, Councillor Alder. Councillor Slade, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. And it is pleasing to see Councillor Smith in the chamber after some eye surgery on Tuesday. Councillor Smith, it's great to see that it all went well, and it's tremendous to see your continuing dedication to this council and this community by making the effort to be here today. So thank you. Councillors, any declaration of any interest at this time? If not, I now go into public presentations. And I'd like to particularly bid welcome to the Chamber Mrs. Lynn James and, of course, her daughter, Mrs. Edwina Chapman. Now, of course, they are here to formally address Council after the passing of the last Mayor of Temora Municipal Council, Mr. Peter James, and of course the first President of Temora Shire as well. We farewelled him recently, and a very special occasion that it was, and I will be speaking further in a mere minute a little later. So I'd like to invite Mrs. James and Mrs. Chapman, if you'd like just to come to the front here at the desk, if you don't mind. Thank you so much for being in our midst today, and to you, Edwina. Now, would you like to speak to Council, Mr. James?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Rick, for the opportunity to attend today to honour Peter's memory. Peter was so proud to be a councillor and did everything in his power to uphold this honourable position. On behalf of myself, Clayton and Tam, Edwina and John and their families, we'd like to thank you and the council staff for all your help at this challenging time. Your support was very much appreciated. Mayor Rick, I would also ask you to pass on our thanks to all involved in the Guard of Honour. It was a very humbling experience for us all. Peter's passing has left a great hole in our family, and we miss you, dear.
That's right, as do we all, and thank you for those beautiful words. And we reflect very much on Mr. James and his contributions, and I know Councillor Judd, particularly having served in this place in the very first council, just remarkable to think that the amount of time that Mr. James spent in this place, and either as a leader or as an alderman or as a councillor, and helping to shape this place that we love so dearly. And I would ask all councillors, staff and members of the gallery to please rise in your places as we have a moment of silence in honour of our esteemed Mayor and friend. Thank you very much. Now, on behalf of councillors and our staff and every citizen of Temora Shire, you know that you've all been in our thoughts and prayers and continue to be so. But we'd also like to present you, Mrs. James, with something that we think is very, very special. And this is a lady's, quite a rare item, a very, very, very special ladies' brooch of Temora Shire Council. They're actually minted by those that make the Order of Australia pins as well. So they are top class, high quality. Temora Shire, we only know how to do things properly. So this is a gift from every single one of us here, as members of your Temora Shire Council family. You'll always be a special part of that, and I would ask you to keep this, wear it with pride, and reflect on the amazing contributions of Peter, who we deeply respect and will never ever forget.
Thank you, and I'll wear it with pride. Thank you.
Thank you very much. very much.
Yeah, no,
Thank you, councillors. Councillors, motion please to accept the April minutes of Temora Shire Council. Councillor Smith, Councillor Slade, moved and seconded. All those in that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. The motion carried. Thank you. Matters arising. Madam Acting General Manager.
no, that's right.
Thank you.
There are no matters arising this week.
Thank you. Councillors, we now go on to the mayoral minute, and you have that loosely on your desks. Temora Shire councillors, our staff and our community are continuing to mourn the passing of our esteemed colleague in the late Peter George James. And it's a pleasure, of course, to note the presence of Mr James's wife, Mrs Lynn James, and daughter, Mrs Edwina Chapman, who are in the chamber with us this afternoon. Mr James was the first elected to the former Temora Municipal Council in 1973, then became the third generation mayor of the James family in 1978, serving until council merged with the Narrabri Shire Council in 1980, which became Temora Shire Council. Mr James was unanimously elected as our foundation president of Temora Shire, a most significant honour indeed. Mr James retired as president and as a councillor in 1985 after an outstanding contribution made to the citizens of Temora Shire. Former Mayor and current Councillor Nigel Judd OAM served on their very first council with Mr James and still serves as a councillor with us today. What a warm reflection, noting that this current council unanimously voted to induct Mr James to the rare and prestigious honour of freedom of the Shire. And the prayers and thoughts of us all remain with Mrs James, son Mr Clayton James, Mrs Chapman, and the entire family. And the late P.G. James is forever etched in our local history and in our collective hearts. Number 2, Council will note the further announcement of grants in recent times. New South Wales Government announced round 4 of the popular Stronger Country Communities Fund. Temora Shire were allocated a total of $789,141. Council will have a workshop tomorrow to consider the various projects we'll recommend to our state member for Cootamundra, Ms Steph Cook MP. Over the 4 rounds of the Stronger Country Communities Fund, Temora Shire have received a total of $3.1 million. It is high time that we finally received our fair share of government funds, and we appreciate it very much. All 4 rounds of the Stronger Country Communities Fund are a tremendous boost for our Shire, and we are most grateful to Ms Cook and the state government for their support of rural local government. There's recommendation, councillors, that we write a letter of thanks to Ms Cook for the round 4 allocation. Number 3, Council will also note that our federal member for Riverina and Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Michael McCormack MP, recently announced a further round of the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Fund. Temora Shire Council will receive $1.6 million. This is on top of the previous rounds totalling $1.5 million. Council will hold a workshop to consider suitable projects as soon as the guidelines are released. And again, these funds are most appreciated and every single dollar will be spent wisely. And there's also a recommendation, councillors, that we write a letter of thanks to Mr McCormack. And number 4, whilst receiving these funds are extremely overwhelming, it also place enormous pressure on our staff. It also must be noted that there is considerable cost shifting that continues to take place with both our state and federal governments. In our business papers today, we will be considering placing our budget on public exhibition. It shows an operation budget deficit of $440,522 and an overall funding surplus of $3,686. This is the first occasion in many, many years we've had to deal with this situation. And it comes down to our expenditure exceeding our income. There are many reasons for this, such as the upcoming election costs, the ever-increasing emergency services levy, but moreover, it is the consistently growing depreciation that is making our overall budget situation the challenge that it is. I know that every councillor, the general manager, the directors, the staff members are all doing our very best to consider various options to remedy the situation. However, this is a position that many rural and regional councils are now finding themselves in. Together with our Shire community, we will continue to work hard in this vitally important space, and further, we have meetings arranged with the New South Wales member for Cootamundra, the member for Albury and the member for Wagga Wagga, that we will be hosting to discuss the important issue of cost shifting, and that will be occurring in the coming months. Council will note the recent reforms of the New South Wales Local Government Act announced by our Minister, the Honourable Shelley Hancock MP. Although detailed guidelines have not yet been provided, the key changes included population growth will now be factored into rate increases, more flexibility in determining rate sub-categories, allowing councils to levy special rates for infrastructure jointly funded with other levels of government, and the emergency services levy being excluded from the rate pack. Further, that we are able to have the ESL as a separate line item on the rate notice. Details on this issue are still to be furnished to councils. And finally, I remind Council of our annual Temora Zone Red Shield appeal. Although the door knock will not officially be held on the weekend of the 29th and 30th of May, we are continuing to receive donations from businesses, community groups and our citizens. Our COVID reflective target figure of $6,000 is something that I believe we will achieve. The spirit of generosity across the Shire is alive and well. And councillors, there's a recommendation there that we adopt the recommendations and the remainder of the mayoral minutes be noted. So I'll move the adoption of it. Second, Councillor Wink moved and seconded. Further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those that have opinion, please say aye. Aye. No. The motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, let's now go to our business papers on page 11. And for those that are in the chamber, you're most welcome to stay, or if you have to take your leave, you certainly may do so. But thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Council, page 11, the minutes of the Temora Traffic Committee meeting held on the 11th of May. Councillor Smith is the chairman. You moving the report to receive, Councillor Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Second information, please. Thank you, the Deputy Mayor. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. The information is carried. Thank you. Councillors, the report is there for your consideration. Does Councillor Smith, as the chair of that committee, have anything you wish to highlight?
No. No, I don't think so. The report is read.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Thank you. Councillors, the reports and recommendations are there for your consideration. Some prepared to move their adoption. Councillor Winky, you're moving and seconding the motion is Councillor Oliver. Moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a query why the item on business on Nixon Park internal traffic had to go to Traffic Committee rather than go to Assets Committee. So just, yes, I know the Traffic Committee will deal with on our roads and streets and that, but I thought internal matters we'd probably deal with. My query.
Thank you. Councillor Judd, does the engineer have a comment?
Not particularly. I've got a funny feeling this is not the first issue that we dealt with in Nixon Park, and funny feeling the other ones read the traffic committee, but I can take on notice and discuss it outside the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Joe?
Oh, my concern is that sometimes when the traffic committee meets first and comes and then we as a council don't agree with it, I don't think it's always a good look that we go against some other committee that's met on the issue, and this is just a typical case probably. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joe. Moved and seconded that the report and recommendations contained therein be approved. There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Let's go to page 32, the Assets and Operations Committee report, and Councillor Winky is the chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just recommend that the report be received.
Thank you. Councillor Winky has moved the report be received. Second, Councillor Rydell moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillor Winky, any items you wish to highlight for Council, please?
The only one I wish to highlight that has been sort of discussed was the one on page, I had it marked here. In regard to the lease arrangements with the, I'll be in the wrong paper. I might be looking at confidential. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, so I'll let it go and let people bring up what they want.
Thanks, Councillor Winky. Councillors, any items you wish to raise in the report for Assets and Operations? The Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, under the Bush Bursary scholarship, it was noted, it was suggested at the assets meeting that we did actually participate in it last year, and normally councils alternate years. The Director of Finances looked it up, and we didn't actually last year. And I think it's very worthwhile that, as you know, nursing students and so forth into the town to see how rural hospital and rural practice and so forth operate. So I think it's a good scheme to be part of. And, I'd like to see that actually $3,000 be allocated in the actual budget for that to go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. So that is for the 21-22. So we actually did not fund one the last financial year. The acting general manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, so the last time we participated was in the 19-20 financial year. We've not participated in this current financial year, and there's currently funding in the 21-22 budget to participate in the program.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren.
I'd like to endorse that we support the $3,000 bush bursary for this current financial year, 2021.
Thank you. We now go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to endorse those comments by the Deputy Mayor. It's very important that we try and encourage young doctors to live in our community. I know there was a report on the radio just recently that Parks, of all places, are struggling to get doctors there, and that's a rather large community, so I fully endorse the comments. Perhaps I'd like to move an amendment, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think that what if someone would like to, this is just a recommendation which was moved by myself and the Deputy Mayor, if you'd like to move a motion in relation to 3.10 Bush Bursary Scholarship, we'd be happy to receive that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that way.
Move that, well, effectively it's the motion that's there without the not.
Oh, well, yeah. Pretty much.
So you're moving that way, Councillor Smith. I beg your pardon, Councillor Oliver.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And seconded, the Deputy Mayor moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those in that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Clear the motion carried. Thank you. The remainder of the report and recommendations, Councillor Judd.
just page 67, the Farm Gate Access Pilot Program. I had several people ask me about, come out in the paper, about what's this term, high productivity vehicles and hire. And it's only when you get into the document you find that it's really referring to road trains and all the bigger trucks. And I think it's probably a very cute term to try and hide what's really going on in some ways. But yeah, so there's a bit of a confusion there about what the general public really thinking about this program. But yeah, that's my only comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. Does the engineer have anything, any remarks to make in response?
No, Mr.
Thank you. Councillors, is someone prepared to move the remainder of the report and recommendations contained therein to the Assets and Operations Committee? Thank you. Councillor Winky, Councillor Smith, moved and seconded. All those. Thank you. Of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The motion carried. Thank you very much. We now proceed, councillors, over to page 144. The Aerodrain Nuisance Committee report, and Councillor Judd is the chairman.
Move the report be received, please.
Thank you. Report be received. Second, Councillor Winky, moved and seconded. All those in that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The motion carried. Thank you, Councillor Judd. Do you have anything you wish to highlight?
Several items there just put out by our engineer, making plans, temporary plans, while we do the major works out there, and yeah, so basically we're sort of happy with what's going on, and hopefully we'll have a good run, the rest of this year, so we can complete the works by Christmas time.
Thanks, Councillor Judd. Councillor Judd. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, pardon me, someone prepared to move the report's recommendations. Councillor Oliver, Councillor Slay, move the second. Further discussion? Not, I'll put the motion. All those in that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. And I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, we should have loose leaf late report minutes of the Access and Equity Committee, but the meeting lapsed due to lack of quorum. Now, my understanding is that those items are going to be referred to their next meeting. So the next meeting on the 10th of August. So perhaps I might just have a motion asking that those items be referred to that next meeting. Councillor Winky, second. Councillor Smith, move and second. All those in that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The motion carried. Thank you very, very much. Councillors, let's now go to page 156, the delegates report. Do we have delegates reports? Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I attended the AGM of the Lake Committee. It was last week, I think it was. The committee was exactly the same as last year. Brett Norman re-elected as the chair of it, and the rest of the positions stayed the same. So they had a very good year. I think they put out $12,000 in fees for the boats and so forth at the lake, which is up, I think, quite a bit on the previous year because of COVID. It was down quite a bit, but even going to 2019, it was still a couple of $1,000 in funds for 2019. And I think the big thing was to come out of it, a lot of the money was cash through the Caltech service station, which indicated it was a lot of outside people coming into the town. The ladies tend to buy a ticket, buy a season ticket type thing, and so forth, whereas the outsiders pay at the service station when it's not coming in. So it's, the lake has been well used by people on that side of this. Probably a good thing in one way, but they probably spend a bit of money in the town while they're here, but yes, going out there is quite crowded with skiing at the time, so yeah, Carnival was bigger, but anyway, it's got
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Further delegates' reports. We go to Councillor Smith.
Springdale Progress Association for last Sunday, and there's not a lot happening out there, but they are just rolling along. Everything's working very well. Everything, there wasn't nothing to upset anybody. Just roll along. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor, just to advise that we, as far as Reebok's concerned, I mentioned in the mayoral minute that we will be having a joint meeting with the members for Wagga, Cootamundra and Albury in relation to cost shifting and so on, but the councils and therefore the Reebok and the Riverina Jail boards keep talking about this, and we decided we needed to get everybody, or the main players in the room, in terms of the state government anyway, and have it out. Now, the member for Cootamundra, we met with her yesterday, the Reebok and the Riverina Jail board, and but she also wants to come back again with these other two colleagues of hers in the state parliament to discuss those genuine issues of concern. Now, further, I had an interview as part of the review of the joint organisations across New South Wales. As you know, there is a review taking place, and consultants evidently based in Queensland. This lady was very kind, but I'm proud to say that it was one of the longest, the longest that she had in terms of, because it was over an hour, but she wanted to know everything that we felt, the good, the bad and the ugly, and that's exactly what we shared with her. So I think we made the most of that experience. I'm disappointed that I was the only one that they interviewed. The others were surveyed. The CEO, Mrs. Briggs, was interviewed, and I suggested the Mayor of Wagga Wagga also be interviewed, which they did do. So we expect, in theory, a report to come from the Minister for Local Government around June, July. I hope that that's going to happen. I unfortunately doubt that, but again, we just never know. And also note that the equivalent, the Chief Executive of OLG, Mr. Tim Hurst, has resigned his position, and they have a fair bit going on at the moment. So in relation to the jail review, let's watch this space. But in the meantime, there will be it used to be 13 JOs, now there's 12. Oh, well, there's technically still 13 because Arana haven't been released yet, but they're not meeting, they're finished. So we'll be meeting in Sydney next week on Thursday, and we'll also be meeting with IPART, the Independent Pricing Regulatory Tribunal, to further discuss how they go about setting their rate peak limits, etc. So we will be meeting with them, and of course we will then, there's an executive meeting of the Country Mayors Association which I'll be attending. After that, on Thursday afternoon, there's a dinner that night, and the Acting General Manager will be accompanying me to Sydney, and the Country Mayors Board meeting is at Parliament House on the Friday as well, and I understand Minister Payne will be one of the guest speakers. And just in relation to the Sports Council, as you know, obviously the COVID, there wasn't any, a great deal of sport being played last year, so therefore the nominations for the 2021 year were practically non-existent, so therefore the Sports Council have indicated that we will still present some of the main awards from the 1920 year, because of course we couldn't have a dinner last year, and so we'll be having that on our normal meeting night, which will be a finger food function at the Services Club, and we will present those awards. But of course we'll be back bigger and better next year now that sporting competition has resumed. So we look forward to having a fantastic dinner next year. So that's all that I have. Is there further delegates' reports, please, Councillor Oliver?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the Bundawarra, the Royal Museum monthly meeting the other evening, and everything seems to be going pretty well out there. They've got plenty of volunteers, and although they're growing older, that's the only problem they have. The issue of the toilet was raised again. Evidently, they're going to put another proposal back to council by way of a three-way partnership involving the Rural Museum and also the FM radio station and council. So the Director might like to touch on that a bit further, but that's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. We'll go to the Director of Environmental Services.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Oliver, that proposal has been received and it'll be form the basis of a report to the next month's Assets and Ops.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I now go to Councillor Reinhold, Delegate's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few, I want to plug TV's got their business awards open again for nominations. Anyone can nominate any business. So please do. Also, the Fruit Fly Committee looking at working with council for an information panel at Hillview Park near the community garden, just to help educate our residents on what to look out for, etc. Also, our film club has got growing membership. It's fantastic. And we got together to select the next 12 months movies. So it's good. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Reinhold. Busy month for you. Thanks very much. No further delegates' reports. If not, let's proceed to page 157, the Mayor's report for the month of April, and there's recommendation page 160 that the mayoral report be noted. Thank you, Councillor Wing. Councillor Oliver moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Although further discussion on the motion, Councillor Wright.
Oh no, I'm sorry, just a mention about the garden ground upgrade at the hospital. Having had both parents in hospital recently, I think it's fantastic because it's pretty lacking at the moment. So
thanks very much, Councillor Wright. Look, this is something we're very, 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 very excited about, and we've actually just received a meeting this morning at the hospital with facility manager Mrs. Temora. My mother actually just has artistically done up the designs that we've done, and also the plants as advised by Mrs. Beth, and the donors that are offering to contribute is very, very heartwarming. And we've got right around the councillors the whole hospital grounds, and we're also looking at the seating, the lack of seating in those garden areas for, whether it's for patients that are well enough to get out, or their family, their friends, staff, whatever it may be. It's going to be made up very, very nicely. And of course the entrances as well is going to be something really lovely with hedges and roses and stuff. Of course, no maintenance, but the Murrumbidgee Local Health District Board also want to partner with us and make a contribution as well. So it's most exciting, and thank you for highlighting that, Councillor Reinhold. There's no further discussion. It's been moved and seconded that the mayoral report be noted. I'll put the motion. All those with that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Just further, Councillor Ryan, it's very exciting that all of our schools in the Shire are actually having fundraisers, and I think it's great. Pajama day. Pajama day, no uniform, I was going to say. But, all towards improving hospitals, gardens and so on. And that's very special stuff. Very special. Now, we go to page 161. Staff reports. Motion, please, to receive staff reports. Councillor Judd, Councillor Reinhold, move and second. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. That motion carried. Thank you. We proceed over to page 162, the General Manager's Report, 10.1, calendar events, the Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The calendar of events is as presented. Starting to fill up pretty well. So.
Yeah, more melody. Thank you. Councillor's recommendation there that Council notes the report. Councillor Smith, Councillor Slade, moved and seconded. Further discussion? Not. I'll put the motion. All those in that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 163, 10.2, Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference, the Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference in November, just looking to nominate a voting delegate and other attendees, which may present a few problems given the election coming up. So, but we've probably at least nominate some positions, I suppose. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Judd.
In view of the elections in September, election in September, I'll move that the Mayor be the voting delegate and that the Mayor and two other councillors, along with the General Manager, be authorised delegates at the conference.
Thank you. Move that way. Second, Councillor Slade. Thank you. Moved. Councillor Judd, second, Councillor Slade. That the Mayor and the General Manager and two other delegates, up to two other delegates, represent Temora Shire at our state conference, which is held on the 28th and 30th of November, which for rural and regional councillors, it's extremely disappointing, and this is raised every year since we've become one association. The former Shires Association used to have theirs at the Wentworth Hotel in June, and it was, to be frank, it was fantastic, and I think all of you would have enjoyed to attend at least one of those that have been given the opportunity. But anyway, we keep persevering. Councillor Judd was suggesting that they change their conference meeting time. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, over to page 164, 10.3, Murray Darling Association Report, the Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report is as written, just a membership of the Murray Darling Association.
Thank you. I go to the Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I feel this is probably a bit outside our area. I don't know if it's worthwhile us being involved in it. I'd like to move that we do not renew our membership.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Second, Councillor Reinhold, that we do not take up membership of the Murray Darling Association. Further discussion on that motion? I go to Greens. The Deputy Mayor. I go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support that recommendation. I can't see what benefits there would be for Temora Shire, given the distances involved. So, I don't see any value in this one. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I do recall, I think the Acting General Manager mentioned the other day about that we were last meeting back in 2017, 18, and we're thinking that there could be some possible grants and so on, but they haven't been forthcoming in that space. Councillor Winky.
Yeah, and I think Mr Mayor, no, I agree as well. It was just council work to the punch, but it's they definitely not for us. I don't think at this stage of the game. Area.
Thank you very much. And particularly given our budget, we're watching every dollar as well. Okay, councillors, the Deputy Mayor has moved a motion that we do not proceed with membership for Murray-Darling Association for 2021-22, seconded by Councillor Reinhardt. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillor, over to page 170, 10.4, the Community Engagement Strategy, the Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this is the draft community engagement strategy that we're looking for council to endorse so that we can commence our community consultation in the lead up to our new community strategic plan.
Thank you. The only thing that I would add is that on page 180 that we also include more independence as part of our engagement. I think they're an important part of that engagement strategy. I think all the others are, of course, have their place. It's interesting to note, councillors, that when the West Island paper shut, and now you have the mind out there that believe that the community needed the paper and they're funding it. So that's great news for Bland Shire. I now go to Councillor Judd.
Also on page 180, 181 about having a stand at the show, and I think it was need to include the Euro Park show as well as the Temora show.
Yes. So does that come up as pop-up chats, or would that be just different?
Well, it probably should be the same as Temora show, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And my other comment or question to the Acting General Manager is the style of actually doing a consultation. Is it going to be any different to the previous consultations we've had?
Thank you. The Acting General Manager?
We're using a different consultant this time, so it may be. She's looking at using a broad, selection of engagement options. So, community meetings and also using social media. She wants to sort of wander the streets and when we've got events on, so she can talk to people who may not even be residents but also locals. So, we're using a different consultant, and the lady we're using is actually, she used to work for the OLG and was integral in developing the IPNR reporting suite. So, she lives in Bredis basically, so hopefully she'll do a good job.
Thank you. Now go to Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a comment on page 177 in some of the likely activities for consultation. I note one of the activities in September, October is targeted focus groups with specific community members, and I'm a little bit anxious about having exclusive meetings. I think that should be interested community members rather than specific community members. I wouldn't like to see people excluded from a community consultation plan if they have genuine interest. So I would like to see that word specific community members be changed to interested community members. And
So thank you, Councillor McLaren. So yes, you acknowledge that there are targeted groups such as whether it's sporting, etc. But you're thinking that there may be
people
just general interest.
Absolutely, they might want to go to all of them, and that's fine. I don't want any exclusivity. I want it to be inclusive.
Yes, drift. Thank you very much. I think the council are happy with that.
Yes.
Thank you. Anything further, council, in relation to the community engagement strategy? If not, besides those inclusions, as mentioned, is someone prepared to adopt the recommendation again with those inclusions? Councillor Reinhardt, Councillor McLaren, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. The motion carried. Thank you. very, very much. Councillors, let's now go over to page 182, Engineering Services Report. Yeah. Any urgent items, Mr. Director, Mr. Manager?
No, Mr. Mayor, and you notice how many reports with the assets. We're early.
You are, that's duly noted. Oh dear. Thank you. We now proceed over to page 183, the Environmental Services Reports, 12.1, the draft Lakes and Climate Climate Management, the Director.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This finalises the plan of management for the Lake Centenary Reserve. It's been placed on public exhibition for the statutory period and no submissions were received, so recommendation is to adopt the draft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director. Councillor Winky, your move the recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Oliver moved and seconded. Further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Let's go to page 210, 12.2, the draft Temora Golf Club plan of management, the Director.
Ditto Temora Golf Club.
Thank you. So, there's a recommendation there, councillors, for you to consider on page 210. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. You're moving the recommendation?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Second the motion moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I declare that motion carried. Thank you very much. Any further items emergent Mr. Director?
I think there's another report.
Very well.
234.
Beg your pardon. You are quite right, thank you. 12.3, the draft Temora Agriculture Innovation Centre Plan of Management, the Director.
So again, Mr. Mayor, and I just need to note the role of the town planner in the management of this process. We had a June 30 deadline and she's met that and with quite detailed plans of management. So
time to spare. Thank you, Mr. Director. I think that it is well known to you and to all that we know how blessed we are with the staff that we do, and certainly the town planner in this regard has done very, very well, and we do thank her very much. Councillors, there is a recommendation there for you to consider on page 234. The Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, there's that way.
So you'll move that we adopt the recommendation. Second, Councillor Winky. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Yes, I'll hear you. Mr. Director, do you now have anything of emergent nature?
Nothing more, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillors, we now proceed over to page 251, the Department of Administration and Finance Report 13.1, Quarterly Budget Review, and that is in the hands of the Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The quarterly budget review is as presented, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillors, the budget review is there for your consideration. And there is a recommendation for you to consider. The Deputy Mayor.
I'll just make the comment that even though it's not probably good as you like, it's a lot better than what it was when we first started. So, we've come a long way, and I think it's the best we can do. Congratulate the staff on putting it all together.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I think you're referring to the later report. Yeah. So the operation plan, delivery plan. Getting excited. Yeah. The quarterly budget review on page 251. There is a recommendation. Councillor Oliver?
I'll move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Move that we adopt the recommendation. Thank you. Second for the motion, please. Thank you, Councillor Winky. Move. And second, is there further discussion? If no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
No. The motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, over to page 263, 13.2, the councillors' fees for 21-22 year. Councillors, just to stimulate debate, and obviously we're going to discuss our very important report on page 266, the operational plan delivery program. In relation to the fees that have been listed there, that 2% increase, in light of the budgetary restrictions that we are going to have to place ourselves on where possible and appropriate, my strong suggestion for council is that we lead by example and show some restraint and not take up that 2% increase in the councillors' fees. Now, I know that in the overall scheme of things that it's not a significant amount of money, but it is my firm view that we need to lead by example. Speaking of the Sports Council delegates meeting last night, again telling them that council are reviewing every function of council, as we've done with the aerodrome, of course sporting grounds and gardens and service delivery. Everything will be on the table, and we do have to realise that there are issues with the income and expenditure. We have to look at it very closely. And I, for one, am proposing that we do not accept the increase for this 21-22 financial year. So that, councillors, over to you. The Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd endorse the sentiments. Thank you to move that way.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. You're moving that the councillor fees remain at current levels.
With zero increase for the following financial years.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren. Councillor Smith, you've seconded the motion. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? No further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, look, I think we've got to lead by example. We're going to wield the axe in many places. I think we have to do that given our situation at the moment. I've been on council for 9 years, and this is the first deficit I've ever seen. So I think we've got to lead by example, Mr. Mayor. Simple as that. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Oliver. Just Councillor, yes, it just wouldn't sit right. Certainly with me, telling other community groups and others that we've got to be cautious in what we spend and what we ask for, and we do have to do the right things, in my view. And I thank you for your comments. I know there's other arguments, councillors, that our expenses are diminishing as a council, and we're setting the scene for a new council as well. I've weighed all that up in my mind, coming to that position that I've come to. But at the same time, I believe that any new council would certainly, I think, respect the decision made by this council. And one day we've got to decide one way or the other what we do. So thank you. The Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree too. I think it's something that Mr. Jett and colleague that whilst not a large amount of money, it's we are leading by example. The other thing I will say though is, according to our director, it's not very well for us to make that comment here, but it does make a lot of work for her and some staff for the next to change a few documents and so forth. So it's not just as easy as a stroke of a pen.
That's very true, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and certainly noted, and that's why they're on the big bucks.
That's right.
No, but thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Deputy Mayor, because it's something that does have to be known to us. But again, council will determine what they feel should be in the budget or not. So we go to Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I support the motion too, but in defence of having a reasonable allowance for councils that our workload in the last couple of years has increased dramatically. And I think the members of the public should be aware of that, and it's especially incoming councillors should be aware of the workload that they're up against. And anyway, it's very time consuming these days to be a councillor if you're going to do it properly and conscientiously. So I think yes, you certainly got to have I reckon an allowance that commensurate with the work. And hopefully in next year's and years to come will improve. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Judd. I couldn't agree more, and I think I see nods around the chamber as well at those remarks. It's unprecedented, frankly, the workload, but at the same time, if you truly love your Shire community, you head down, tail up, but you're quite right that but it's something that does need to be looked at in terms of the realistic fees given the increased workload. Councillors, you have a motion before you from Councillor McLaren and Councillor Smith that councillor fees remain the same with zero increase for the 2021-2022 financial year. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. Let's now go to page 266, 13.3, the draft operational plan, delivery plan, long-term plan. Very, very important report, and that is in the hands of the acting general manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report is as written with the amendment that we've just made in the previous resolution. The new deficit amount would be 438,221. And that also incorporates obviously the changes that we made at the workshop. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. And as the Deputy Mayor alluded to earlier, Madam Acting General Manager, but the work you and your finance department put into this, and all directors and managers, we do thank you and we do applaud you. It certainly hasn't been an easy one, that's for sure. But I'm also very proud of the councillors for the workshop that we held recently. The councillors and staff come together and worked out for several hours where we can potentially save some dollars as well without stifling that basic progress that Temora Shire is well known for. But it is a reality that we do have to cut our cloth to suit, and the General Manager warned us last year of that, and I think the Director Administration and Finance said the chickens have come home to roost, and this is the message that we're hearing right across our region and beyond. So I now go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've really got to try and make some savings somewhere, somehow, because if we don't, we're starting behind the eight ball for the next financial year, and progressively gets harder and harder from there on. So I think some fairly serious cuts, or whatever you want to call it, service deliveries or whatever they may be, have to be all looked at, I think so. It's not a very good position to be in, but that's where we find ourselves. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Oliver. I couldn't agree more, and I think that certainly the first job of the new council is going to be exactly that. Exactly that, and I know that that's happening across the region, as I said earlier. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yes, I believe that if we don't cut the clock pretty hard, we will, in the next few years, we'll find that we'll be putting rate rises up like some of our neighbouring councils, which is not good to bring people into the community. People are looking at where their rates are, how much rates are, and I think Temora has a very good record of their rates and their increases in rates compared to a lot of the neighbouring shops. I just think, congratulations to the team.
Thanks very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor, you will note that certainly in relation to sewerage, that we are amongst the lowest in the state in terms of what we charge, and that's something that we just can't afford to continue what we have been doing. However, with this modest 10% increase, it certainly will assist the bottom line. I now go to Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question is probably to the engineering manager. It's about depreciation, and I'll take it to page 277, and there's considerable depreciation of $3,790,000. My question to the manager is when we get our grants for our roadworks and that, is there a depreciation component in that, or is it something we have to do on a late budget to it later?
Thank you, Councillor Judd. I go to the engineer.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So, no, the grants don't take into account depreciation, and to a large extent, it depends what the grants are for, but I'd say arguably most of the time they make the depreciation position worse because they're upgrade projects. Whenever council adds an asset, whether it be any sort of asset, swimming pool, water slide, new road, widened road, any time we add, we're sort of adding to our asset stock, which adds to our depreciation expense. The biggest hit to depreciation has been the revaluation process, changing auditors, probably a more robust process around the revaluation process, and I think we're still extremely aggressive. We've got reasonable renewal rates, and we've got really, really long useful lives, which gives us little room to change. I think roads we probably average. Maybe we could be a bit more aggressive, but there are other areas where the situation will get worse and better. That's my view.
Thanks, Mr. Engineer. I now go to Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thought I had was perhaps whether this was the year to add an additional document to the economic development portfolio, and I wondered whether whether it was an option to defer for 12 months, but I understand the workload is enormous in that portfolio, but I'm tossing up between this budget deficit we've got, which we haven't had ever before, and I'm just wondering whether we can afford that. But, I just wanted to suggest that.
Yes, thanks very much, Councillor McLaren. Does the Acting General Manager have any comment? And again, acknowledging that Councillor McLaren was away on leave but couldn't attend the budget workshop. So, the Acting General Manager.
I think we did talk about the economic development position, and here we are May, we haven't started recruitment or anything yet, so it could well be well into the new calendar year before we start that process. So while funds are in the budget, they may well not be used in full, certainly. Yeah. And it may be a staged process too, like we might try and find someone just on a part-time basis initially anyway.
So there could be some budget savings in that item.
Through the committee, yes.
Oh, that's...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Thank you, Madam Acting General Manager. Councillor McLaren, that was discussed at length because I think nearly every councillor had that as something that could be deferred, and of course weighing up what is going on in the Shire, as you're aware. It's certainly unprecedented, frankly, and that's why I felt to leave it in the budget. However, there was that likelihood of it not necessarily being expended for all of it. So thank you. At least, again, looking for savings, and it's not easy. The Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other thing that's just last week been announced, which you may be loosely aware of, is the rating reforms and with relation to the emergency services levy. So we don't have the finer details at the moment, but they're actually now talking about allowing us to put that emergency services levy on our rate notice, which would mean that the entire cost of our emergency services levy would be transferred to the ratepayers. So that would be actually, our emergency services levy, I think, is about 3,300, 315 or something. So
that would be noted as a state government levy. So at least how that actually is going to work in reality, the detail still has not been relayed to us by the Office of Local Government.
Yeah, that's right. We're still waiting on guidelines from the Office of Local Government, but I think it's their intention that come into play this next financial year. I'm not sure logistically how that will happen, but...
Well, never got long to get the details sorted. Thank you. Councillor Judd.
Question to the Director, what percentage would that put our rates up if the levies levied separately?
We go to, just remember, this only just happened late last week when we got a phone call from the State President to advise us verbally. We received an email the other day, and we discussed it yesterday. So the Acting General Manager.
So our emergency services levy is about 363,000. So that would be, we haven't got the guidelines yet as to, which category of rates are exempt from this levy. Would it just be a flat fee on every assessment, or would it be, based on land value? So we don't really know how it would be applied to ratepayers across the Shire. But it's, 363,000. So it's what's it?
That's right. Thank you. We go to Councillor McLaren.
Isn't that just a cost-shifting exercise, though, from us directly paying it to our residents, then charged more so we get more income in? So it's a nil-sum game for the Shire, in my books. We're sucking more out of the ratepayers.
That's right. That's right. But at the end of the day, what do we do? This is a legislation by the government, and we can't do anything about it. And again, it comes back to this cost shifting issue. We know that the Rural Fire Service do an outstanding job, all of us, and there's many of us, or many in the chamber here that are still involved, have been involved, and we thank God for them. However, there's been from on high, there seems to have been this empire that has been built over the last, some would say 2 decades and perhaps more. It is unbelievable what we're talking now. What was it? Was it $900 million? $900 million, the RFS. Unbelievable. Councillor McLaren.
I think when you distill it across ratepayers, it takes away the ability to challenge that figure because it gets dispersed amongst a large number of people, and if it stayed within a council expense, we can lobby on behalf of our residents that this is getting out of control, because it could go up a lot more without anyone making a fuss, because it's a little bit across thousands of people. So I'm uncomfortable about the move because I think it'll just go on the radar and it'll just keep going up.
Yes, thank you, Councillor McLaren. It's anyway, it is now legislation, and we have to wait and see what the detail is. and it has to come very, very soon. Very, very soon. So, anyway, that is how it is. But you're quite right. There's a heck of a lot of, and again, that was put in as last week from certain parties in the upper house of the state parliament, and it was just very, very unpleasant from what we hear, what went on with various amendments, etc., during the whole raft of local government amendments, various acts. We'll go to Councillor Smith.
I just think it's not a big price to pay. If you've got a fire roaring towards your place, and you think, well, I'm going to spend $100, a couple of bucks extra on the rates, you think, by God, that's cheap. If they can put that fire out before it gets here. Doesn't matter if it's fire, flood, whatever it is. You know. I know I've been in the rural fire service since 1st of January 65. And, you know, it's a voluntary thing. Nobody gets paid. You don't want to be paid, because when you get paid, and like some other organisations are, they can then say, we want you to do this, this and this, and you don't become a volunteer, you are then an employed person. I've got no problem, no great problem with them charging a small amount of money per landholder or householder or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, and please note that nobody is ever suggesting that we don't warmly praise and acknowledge our volunteers. And I don't think anyone has an issue at all, nobody, with the volunteers, but it is the top-heavy bureaucracy within the RFS that we do have the issue with.
Yeah, I realise that too.
Yeah, but you're quite right. Volunteers, they are very... The old saying, there's nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer, and it certainly rings true with our RFS volunteers. Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think this could have this extra rate on our ratepayers, extra levy on our ratepayers, that could have an effect, because a political effect, because ratepayers vote. And if Councillor McLaren said that council should be lobbying, but I think there's more ratepayers throughout New South Wales than there are councils, and I think that would make a louder sound than just some councils hanging on a bit. So perhaps that might be a good thing if this does happen, or it's going to happen anyway. It's legislated, as you say. So maybe it could get against them, perhaps. I don't know. But anyway, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Oliver. Well, councillors, you have this important report here before you. It does need to go out public exhibition. There has been an amendment of the councillors not taking up their 2%. You see the 10% increase for sewage services, which is still, I think, only about $25-ish in the average home. So councillors, the budget is there for your consideration. There is a recommendation at the bottom of page 266, of course, with that amendment in relation to council fees. Councillor Oliver,
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move that be placed on 28 days on public exhibition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second of the Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Move. The second on discussion on the motion. Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll take you back to the mayoral report. Now I mentioned item 4, and Councillor Oliver said before, in the future we're going to have to cut our clock to meet our budget. Councillor Smith said we're going to have to raise rates to meet our budget in the future. But I feel that, as mentioned in item 4, that with all these cost shifting and depreciation coming into account, I feel that local government today, especially in rural councils like ourselves, It's not going to be viable in the future. We just can't be cutting things back and increasing rates. We've got to convince the government that the whole system is wrong. You know, because they've adopted the accounting practices, you know, to take in appreciation, you know, it's having a devastating effect on our budget. And I think we've got to have a serious campaign to put this to the government. You know, they've got to have a re-look at how they're doing these things. Because we can't be, you know, for a council like Temora, who's had balanced budgets for a number of years now, and be suddenly, you know, over 400,000 in deficit, goes to show there's something wrong. And I think we've got to look at the big picture and go. And I'm glad to see that we're meeting with our 3 local state members. And I think hopefully we can move on from there to take on the government, you know. And it's another issue too that I think later in the year we take to our state conference. I know New South Wales, but we just can't be lying down and taking this. You know, we've got to be, someone's got to make a stand. And I think it's up to our council to probably take a lead. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. You're quite right. And Councillor Judd, and that's why I suggested, as the chairman of REROC and the JO board, that I keep hearing it from our council, keep seeing it, I keep hearing it and seeing it from other councils. And that is why I suggested we have the joint meeting with those 3. Now, we already met with Member Kurtamundra, but that was on her own, so she also wants to be present with the other 3, and the other big part of it 2. They wish to be part of it, because you're quite right. We can write letters after letters after letters, but they need to feel the heat and feel the pain that we're feeling and experiencing as councils and communities, and in this particular case, Temora Shire. So, Councillor Judd, I certainly would welcome if you wish to move a motion that we actually can formally write to our various bodies. That's being, of course, Riverina JO, Country Mayors Association of New South Wales, Local Government New South Wales. Yes, we're all in the same boat, but we need to formalise these things in writing, and in order to formally have them debated and considered. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, I'm willing to move that way, but whether it's a bit premature or not, because you're right, as you say, no good just writing a letter. We need to have the arguments to back up our case. And I think I'm not really confident yet we've got the arguments in place, but I mean, hopefully in the coming weeks we can do something to put a case together and put to the government. But anyway, I'll move that motion that we write to these different members and authorities.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Judd. You're right, we do have to, but I think there's always a basic framework, though, for us to do that. And yes, Riverina, JO and REROC are taking that initial action, but I think that we need to also formally flag it with our other peak state bodies. Councillor Oliver, you second the motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor, and a comment if I may. I fully support Councillor Judd's motion here. What state governments are doing, they're trying to make us look like the bad guys. They're trying to make us look not financially viable. It's part of their big plan, I reckon. It all goes back to the Fit for the Future thing, and they're relentless in what they're doing. So I think Councillor Judd said we've got to make a stand and make a hell of a lot of noise. So thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Well, again, it all starts with one, and that's why I am proud of the fact that we, as a region, taken the lead to have 3 state members that cover the footprint of the Riverina JO and the REROC areas. And that is a very, very important session. However, we also need to involve country mayors, as their membership is increasing very, very rapidly, which is fantastic, but also our state association that we pay handsomely to be part of. So, councillors, you have a motion before you. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Now, page 266, the operational and delivery plans, with recommendation there for council to consider, with, of course, that amendment for council fees. Councillor Oliver and the Deputy Mayor have moved that. So no further discussion.
We've already done that.
Did I put it there? No, I didn't think I had. No. That was a decided separate motion. So, it's been moved and seconded by Councillor Oliver and the Deputy Mayor that we adopt the recommendation on page 266 with that amendment in relation to the council of fees. Okay. There's no further discussion. Okay, so Councillor Oliver and the Deputy Mayor, you see the motion on the screen. That reflects what you moved. There's been no further discussion. There's no further discussion. I'm going to put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillor Judd.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I didn't check the wording, but the wording of the motion underneath, which I moved, I think it needs to show more than concerns over cost shifting issues. I think it needs a future viability of council.
Stronger in the language.
Yes. And to cover more.
Yep. So, Councillor Oliver, you're thinking to express our major. What's the strongest word, Councillor Slay?
That's probably that'll do.
Major concerns over cost shifting issues, future viability.
Affecting the future.
Affecting the future. Major concerns.
Major ongoing concerns, or is that something repeated, or just chuck a couple of words in or something?
Okay. So, Councillor Judd and Councillor Oliver, are you happy with what you see now on the screen? It just strengthens it.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Right, and Council, you're happy with those slight amendments. Thank you. Now, anything further on the late presentation from the Acting General Manager?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And again, we thank you and your team for the amount of effort that's been put in. I've seen your vehicles here over the weekend and late at night on many occasions, so Council does appreciate your commitment to this Council and to the Shire community. Let's go on to page 347. We commence with correspondence. And 14.1, the New South Wales Police Force, the Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a request to waive some fees for the hire of the rec centre. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much. I'm going to hold my tongue, councillors, and I'm going to hear what councillors have to say on this particular item of correspondence. The Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it is a bit of a hard one. I mean, we talk about high school students and so forth, but at the same time, I think police force have probably got a reasonable budget that they could really afford to pay the fees, and I think we need to. This is one of those times where we can take a strong stand, I think, and deny the request.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Now go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll endorse the Deputy's comments. We've just been talking about cost shifting. This is just another cost shift from one New South Wales government department to another. So, did you get the Councillor? You didn't move it. Well,
we haven't got a motion yet.
I'll move that we do not succeed to their request. Thank you.
Councillor Oliver is moving that we deny the request from New South Wales Police Force. Obviously, I think we're all enthusiastic about the program that they will be hosting. So you're moving that way. A second of the motion. Councillor Slade moved and seconded. Councillor Slade.
I'd like to make a comment though that we, in that motion, mention in view of the current serious financial prospects facing the council, and then go on from there. I wouldn't like us simply to say, sorry, police department, you can't have that $625. They go out and book a couple more of us. But I think that if that mention is made, and probably it might need to be made in a number of future motions that we come up with, because we are faced with a reality.
Due to budgetary restraints.
Due to budgetary.
Thanks very much, Councillor Slade. Further discussion on the motion, Councillor Winky.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in agreement with the former speakers, but I think to me this is a cost that should be borne by the New South Wales government, not by local government.
Thank you, Councillor Winky. Councillor Oliver, further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to perhaps in the letter, when we write back to them, just make them aware that we have a Temora Police Community Committee, and I think this is something that committee, speaking as a former treasurer, of course, perhaps might be willing to contribute some funds towards it, but perhaps not all, but something, if a letter was written, I think it might be favourably considered, perhaps. Thank you, Mr.
Mayor. As the chairman of that committee, I certainly believe that no harm in asking, that's for sure. But yes, I wouldn't like to preempt what the members would do, but certainly you can't get shot for asking. Well, hopefully not sort of denying it, yes. So thank you, Councillor. I think that's duly noted by the Acting General Manager. But in the correspondence that we include, the Temora Police Community Committee could be maybe worth considering, maybe worth approaching to for them to consider assistance. Yes, Councillor Oliver and Councillor Slade.
Sorry.
Councillors, just you will know, we'll just thank you for your patience, but for our next meeting we will be having someone where we've got the Acting General Manager trying to be the Acting General Manager and Director of Finance Administration at Council meeting. We will have someone else be assisting in that capacity, because it's certainly a lot of extra pressure on Council meeting night, and the Acting General Manager.
Lucky I'm female.
Yes, indeed. There's no further discussion. I will put motion to you. All those that have please say aye.
Aye.
Promptly no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 349, 14.2, measure up bone bus. The Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a request for the measure up bone bus park in front of the medical complex.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Winky.
I thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is something that has been here before, as it's been stated here, but I don't think in front of the medical centre is the ideal place for it. We need to pick those parks free for those attending the medical centre. So I'd like to either see it across the road from there or back up near the community centre as it was last time. And if that's the case, I'd move that way.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Winky. You're moving second, Councillor Smith. that we deny permission for Measure Up Dane Bus to park in front of the Temora Medical Complex. However, the council granted permission to park near the Temora Community Centre in a suitable place at the Temora Community Centre. Councillor Ryan. Yeah. Thank you. Move and second. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion. Further discussion, Councillor Wynn.
Yeah, I think we probably should specify not in front of the, not right in front of the community centre, like, yeah, so that they're aware that we don't want it there either, really. Yeah, a little bit either side.
Yeah. Thank you. So we'll just include that, not directly in front of the entrance to the Temora Community Centre. Further discussion? With no further discussion, I will put the motion to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, we now proceed over the page to 360. 14.3, Adamson Street names, the Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a request to place Adamson on the register of street names that we choose.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
I wouldn't have any problem at all in the name of Adamson for a street name, because Adamson's was the grocery store. L.A. Adamson's was L.A. Sales, which was the international prior to Intersales. I think it would be a great tribute to the name of Adamson. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Smith.
I'll move that way.
We'll go to, can you just hold that thought, please, Councillor Smith? We'll go to Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the historical significance of the name Adamson, I'd probably like to see this go to our Heritage Committee just for their perusal and perhaps endorsement too. I think that's how I. Do you think?
So, they're going to give it, so.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. All right.
So, thank you, Councillor Oliver. Just further to that, what other thing, I mean, I've heard, my elders and betters talk about Mr. Adamson and the unbelievable. My mother was there as a ticket writer in younger days, and but I just what other community roles are we aware of that the Adamsons were involved in community life? Are we aware of, or?
I think they had a fair bit to do with the Temora show.
Sorry, Councillor Smith.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. I think they had a fair bit to do with the Temora show many, many years ago.
Yep. And
because Brian Carlenfeld was an employee.
That's true, and his future wife. Councillor Judd, have you got anything? You're the elder statesman, the father of the chamber. Do you have any?
That old.
You're the father of the chamber, so therefore share some of your knowledge, if you can, please, on Adamson.
No, I think it's all been said before. It's certainly part of Temora when I was growing up, and coming to the Adamson store, and as Councillor Oliver said, Sue said about starting up LA Sales, which was the big store at the time for machinery. So and I tend to agree with Councillor Oliver, though. Still would like to run it past the Heritage Committee. So yeah.
So thanks very much, Councillor Judd. So Councillor Smith, back to you. You're going to move a motion. Would you like to move a motion that perhaps the council include Adamson on the potential street, park, etc. names for the future, subject to endorsements from the Heritage Committee?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so you'll move that way. Second. Councillor Oliver?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll second that. And I think going to the Heritage Committee, someone like Bill Spears might even have some more information on that name. So I think we probably owe them to at least find out as much as we can.
Thank you. I think that's wise, because particularly I think, yes, in terms of business and synonymous, but I'd really love to know, besides business, what other things besides the Shire Society they contribute to in terms of community service and community contribution. So thank you very much, Councillor Smith and Councillor Oliver. Are you happy with the motion that's before you on your screen? Sorry, Councillor Smith. It was resolved that Council approved the name Adamson to the register of potential street facility names, subject to endorsement by Council's Heritage Committee. Move and second, happy?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you. Further discussion? If no further discussion, I will put the motion to you. All those in opinion, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. We have a motion carried. Thank you very much. I'm actually surprised that wasn't considered years ago, but I suppose someone's got to take the time to actually submit it, not assume that the council of the day can think of everything. Anyway, thank you. Let's go to page 362, 14.4, Area Park Netball Court, the Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report as written. Probably refer this one to the engineering manager if there's any questions.
Thank you. It's got to work a little bit, right? The engineer, do you have anything you wish to add before we open discussion to council?
Only that this request came in really late, come from the council reports, and hence why it was included in correspondence.
What's the dollar value that we're talking about, please, Mr. Engineer?
To be honest, I don't think it'd be a huge cost to, might be a couple of $1,000 to tidy it up with a sealed edge. I guess the issue I see there is it's still not compliant, even if you're going to do that. But
what about the removal of the sheds that they've mentioned? Who pays for that?
Well, if we were to do the job, it would be us. Anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions once it's considered.
Thank you. Councillor Judd, do you have any comments?
Could I recommend it would probably be referred to the workshop tomorrow morning? Could be included on items for the sporting facilities for the ladies.
I thought there's a minimum there. Probably the federal government one maybe be better. The local roads and community infrastructure one, it's more broad. Has been more broad, hasn't it? Because the other, you've got to have a minimum of 50,000.
Yes, well, I'm working on that. So. Anyway, can I have it? I'll recommend it be referred to tomorrow morning's workshop for initially anyway.
Okay, so you're moving that we refer to the Round 4 Stronger Country Community Fund workshop for consideration. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Slade. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Further discussion? Thank you. Councillor Smith.
I was just wondering if the netball people out there may be able to contribute some small amount of money to save our budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Well, yes, I don't know. I couldn't see if there was any offers of contribution over Councillor Joe, you're aware of.
Anyway, I think if we refer it to tomorrow morning's workshop, it just won't be an effect on our budget. It'll probably might come out of some of the grant funding we're talking about.
Okay, so if there's further discussion, if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Okay, the motion carried. Thank you very much. Now, let's go to late items of correspondence, which has been deemed urgent. Correspondence 14.5, Rural Community Church. The Acting General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The request for assistance from the Rural Community Church, having taken the property.
Thank you. Well, Councillor, I would have thought this was a simple one, but I'm in your hands. The Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Mayor, you said I think it's straightforward. It tends to be outside our area. I think it's something we should be involved in.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
I agree with the Deputy Mayor, and I know Marul was great people out there South Marul. They support Temora very much. It is out of their area, and we are just explain that it's a very tight situation for budget. There's other things that are happening, and I think we should just, if they're in our Shire, it might be a different thing. They're not in the Shire, but like I said, they're great people out there, and they support Temora very well. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Yes, you're quite right, and it's great to see that famous Fanny Lumsden coming and utilising the Area Park Memorial Hall, and I think it's also great that the Rural Community Church Incorporated actually got to save their church. I think that's fantastic, but ultimately they will be the beneficiaries. So, councillors, what's your wish? I haven't got a motion before me. Anybody? Councillor Smith.
Note the report.
Thank you. So you'll move that we note the item of correspondence, Rural Community Church. Thank you. Second for the motion, Councillor Oliver. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Further discussion. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, we go on to now pay, again, your loose leaf 14.6, the Temora St Paul's Anglican Church footpath. I'm a member of the parish council there, so I will make the chair, and then we go to the Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll hand this over to Acting Chair, Acting Dan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just a request from St Paul's Anglican Church regarding the footpath following the removal of the full curb with concrete.
Councillor Wiki. Yeah, can I just a question to the manager? Would there have to be some of that topsoil removed to put the crushed granite down for a start? Just a little bit of it, just a scrape off some of it.
Yeah, that's correct. So I think this correspondence really relates to the report to the Assets and Operations Committee. That's what I'm reading it, yeah. And so yeah, the option would be to either turf or decomposed granite.
Thanks, Mr. Engineer. In a way, this is fairly well covered, I think. The two options were, and the process was either decomposed granite or turf, so yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. Yes, we do.
Given that if we were to do that part of the footpath, would we continue up past the police station and the courthouse from one hit while we're going? To save another move back again and finish up till there and leave the other side to see what the residents want to do with that then, or what?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. That's correct. Yeah, I think, subject to the other report passing the Assets and Operations Committee, which I think is in the next slide, that would be, we should contact everybody and then we do it as a bulk lot.
Councillor for the Councillor Taylor.
I'll move that we agree to the request to lay Deputy Post Grant on footpath.
Okay, do you have a second?
Clarification.
Well, Councillor Wick seconded that.
Just to clarify, when you say, how was the actual, what was the actual wording you used? Councillor McLaren considers the request to do what? Just to do the part in front of the Anglican Church, or to do the part up to beyond the courthouse?
We consider.
Councillor Slade.
Councillor Slade.
Dennis.
Slade, we did. Councillor Taylor.
That we agree to the request to lay decomposed granite along the edge of the footpath up until the southern edge of the courthouse pavement footpath.
Are we happy with that, or
Yes. No, sorry.
I just want to know, should those organisations or houses be given an opportunity to decide what they want with this big post grant or dirt? Because I know I'm pretty sure at least one person further down does want dirt rather than big post grant.
Yeah, that was just going to be my comment as well. I think we should be approaching everyone on that street to find out just what the others want. If we want decomposed granite, we can continue on most possibly, and there's a lot more here while we're up here.
Can I amend that to just the request in front of the church at this stage?
Engineer?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've just been scouring that through the notes, but you go to page 88 on the council papers, it's sort of covered by this resolution where council gives the landowners a choice. Based on that, we'll contact everybody in the coming weeks and come up with a plan. We're not going to all over in one go.
Thanks, Mr. Engineer. Yeah, it sounds like I'll go down it. So, everyone happy with the resolution? No? And those in favour?
Aye.
Motion carried.
She's going to cross through. Choose the voting. Moving down that panel because the yes,
Mr. Mayor, get the council to proceed to the request of the post granite.
Thanks very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you, councillors. We'll say one for you someday. Now, let's go to 14.7, the letter from Mr. Taylor, the Twyman Street residents, the acting general manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a letter from Mr. Taylor following his presentation at the public forum earlier today.
Thank you. Effectively, councillors, it's Mr. Taylor asking us to reconsider our decision, and we have heard that Mr. Taylor gave a very passionate Please, you heard in the public forum, and it is now up to council to determine if they wish status quo to continue or reconsider their decision. Councillor Smith.
I just think I'd hate to set a precedent because this could start on a large number of streets around the town. I move that we note the report.
Thank you. So you're moving that we note the report. The motion seconded. Councillor Winker, you seconding the report?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Smith that, look, the Nixon will know Camp Street's on our hammer, then Vesper Street, and it'll just spread like wildfire after that and be everywhere all over town. We've got a lot of parks where trucks drive past. We've got Callahan Park. There's trucks passing it, and it's unfenced. It's got pedestrian crossing there, for the kids to move across as they go to Callahan Park as well. You've got the Bob Aldridge Park. It's everything that's around there where a lot of kids are mentioned, and we start pushing trucks out of one area, it's going to increase trucks in another area. So we're not going to be any further ahead. I think we've just got to leave it as a status quo. I second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Winky, who has seconded Councillor Smith's motion. Now I would ask the engineer. Does the engineer have any comments, please?
I think firstly I'd probably apologise for not being at the public forum. Looking after kids today, I couldn't get here till 4. But to be honest, I'd support council in the report. The volumes that the Twine Street Home experience are no different to any other residential street. I'd argue the parks that were just mentioned, like Callaghan Park and Gloucester Park and Nixon Park and Bob Aldridge, see similar, if not more, amounts of heavy vehicles. I think we definitely continue to monitor the situation and, potentially, there's some other things in the making that may, decrease heavy vehicle movement in that area. It is an industrial area and it's probably susceptible to heavy vehicle non-compliance or heavy vehicles, but the volumes are not great at the moment, and I think support council's views at this point in time.
Thank you. Councillor Smith and Councillor Winky, would you consider adding into that motion just a suggestion, result that we note the report and further that we continue to monitor the area? So move and second, happy with that?
Sounds good.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Slade.
I think that idea of adding about monitoring is important, but I also feel that it's important that we look at the precedent. That is, that we acknowledge in the letter, we see that you're talking about a park, but we realise there are also parks all over the place. Because my thought was to vote against the motion until that thought's come up with the litany of parks that have been mentioned. So I think if those 2 points went into it, ongoing monitoring and also that there are other parks in the same situation, I think that would soften the blow a little bit.
Thanks very much, Councillor Slade. I think, Council, we do appreciate Mr. Taylor, his advocacy. I love passion, particularly if it's measured and respectful. I think he's certainly done that, and I see that there's a motion before us that I'm going to put to the vote if there's no further discussion. Click if you wish to speak, you need to click. Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I tend to agree with Councillor Slade. I was in the opinion probably that maybe signage, warning of the slow down near a park might be appropriate in this area. But I'd like to still consider that, but maybe after a bit more monitoring and comparing. Even when Gloucester Park and Callahan Park we're talking about, there are signs there for those parks, children being in the area. And, so we do have precedents for that as well. So I'm willing to go with the motion, but maybe revisit it at some time in the future.
Thanks very much, Councillor Joe. Well, Councillor, there's no further discussion. I do thank Council because we have considered this at length, both at committee level and at council level. So I do thank you for your serious consideration of this, and we will revisit this space again. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. The motion carried. Thank you very much. No further items of emergence. Nature, Madam Acting General Manager.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, we don't have any notice of information. It's one that Councillor Winky prompted me on that I just wanted to mention from the outset before I go around the chamber. Is he mentioned about Callahan Park. Now, those councillors and senior staff members are able to attend our very intimate and lovely occasion to commemorate the 100th anniversary of this beautiful building since laying the foundation stone by then Mayor William Callahan. We invited as one of our honoured guests with the Deputy Prime Minister and Mr. Bland, the grandson of the builder N.W. Bland, son, who was Deputy Mayor as well, and Alderman of Temora Municipal. It was a lovely occasion, but we had the granddaughter of Mayor Callaghan, Mrs. Fran Wooden, and she, after all of these years, she finally confirmed that the G in Callahan is in fact silent. So for generations that have been saying Callaghan, as I have, and I think all of us have, we've been wrong with the bottom line. So I thank Councillor Winky and Councillor Judd for leading by example, and I think Councillor Slade for calling it Callahan, and we will all do our best to ensure that we comply with Mrs. Wooden's wish. Callahan Park and Mayor Callahan. So thank you very much. I'll go around the chamber for business without notice. The Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Councillor Reinhold, business without notice.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This week is Volunteers Week, and the community centre had a morning tea for their volunteers yesterday morning. For 39 years, Carol Taylor has volunteered at the community centre every Friday afternoon at the desk. Carol passed away on Saturday evening, so we dedicated the morning tea to Carol. And it was a lovely morning, and her funeral was today, so just wanted to pay tribute to Carol. And on another note, at Gloucester Park, the rotundas are looking a bit tired. I don't know if they could be spruced up with a fresh coat of paint.
Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. In relation to it's what they call rotundas. I get called rotunda, but it's not the same thing.
Like the Decolas where the barbecues are.
Yes. So that's been noted, Councillor Reinhold, whether there's something in the maintenance budget we have left that can be looked at.
Nearly a new financial year.
Anyway, it certainly has been noted, Councillor Reinhold, in relation to, you're quite right, National Volunteers Week. I did do a film a minute with the Mayor on that yesterday, and I understand that's going to be posted. You're quite right. It is a time to reflect on all of our volunteers. I think every one of us in the chamber, or most of us, volunteer, bless you, in one or many capacities, and certainly our community are full of selfless volunteers. And I said before, and I say it again, the old saying that there's nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer. It is so very true. So to all of them, we do pay tribute. And you mentioned Miss Carol Taylor's passing. I remember as a young show society committee when I was a young school student, and she took over Mrs. Lorraine Board as secretary. And I had never seen more efficient when she was writing a cheque. Again, in the old days, they had to be so careful that they didn't make an error, repeated everything in what she wrote, just her efficiency and her pride that she had in her community of Temora was certainly very noticeable, and our prayers and thoughts are with her and her family. So thank you for sharing that, Councillor Reinhold. Nothing further?
Thank you.
Thank you. We go to Councillor Judd. This is about notice.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. One thing I didn't mention in the aerodrome users report was that before we had a meeting out the aerodrome last week, we had an inspection of a new gliding club hangars and storage facility. And Councillor Slay and Councillor Winky and myself were able to join with the gliding club people and the aero club people to look at, and we were very impressed with the building. It's an asset to them. It goes to show that the people when they got a club like that and members who are willing to get in and spend their own money and do things rather than just come to council and ask. And it's certainly a first-class facility. They actually are storing 11 gliders in that facility now, and 10 of those 11 gliders are from outside Temora. So the idea being people from Canberra, Sydney, whatever, when they come to Temora to glide, that's where they store the things, and it's a great facility, and I congratulate the Temora Gliding Club on what they've achieved. I know Councillor Slay's breaking his neck to comment on it as well, but you want to talk now, Councillor Slay? Right. Look, the second point I want to raise is a question to the engineering manager, and I've had concern expressed about the spraying of the shrubs and trees on our state roads, and especially the table drains. I know it's a way of trying to control the trees, but it's not a good look, and I'm just wondering whether there's any future plans to actually remove the dead trees, or whether it's just going to be an eyesore for time to come.
Thanks, Councillor Judd. I go to the engineer.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I guess the idea of spraying the vegetation is to catch it as early as you can. It's probably no real plan to remove them. However, if they're of a larger size, I think it's something we can look at. And I'll take that on notice, and I'll have a chat to Alex, and we can have a look. It's something we're going to be doing more of. There's way too many places around the council where table drains have been let go and there's trees everywhere. We really need to make a conscious effort to maintain that road in a carriageway, and I'll take it on notice, and we'll get some response to you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Judd, and all of us at council acknowledge the gliding club and their efforts as well. So thanks for sharing that. And now go to Councillor McLaren. This is about notice.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just by way of notice, an event that Amanda Gay's got coming up in the next month or so, the Active Ageing Expo, was held a couple of years ago and was very successful, had a very large turnout. And she's encouraging councillors to come along during the day if they can make it, if possible. It's on Friday the 25th of June. It's at the Town Hall, and it's from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's has information, service providers, seminars, demonstrations and stalls for over 50s, including their families and carers. So it was a really great community interaction a couple of years ago when I attended, and then when we do let everybody know if they're welcome and to note in the diary, 25th of June. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor McLaren, and it's all duly noted for those that are aging. Let's go to Councillor Winky.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'd just like to join in with Councillor Judd's mentioning of the Glider Club facility out there. It's been fantastic to see that they bought three hangars and joined them together into one, and really made use of that particular block, which had to be kept low. So it's a very low hangar. But that suits gliding, so it's not a problem there at all. But they've done a fantastic job with that. And they sort of want to continue on with it, I think, and eventually put a clubhouse out the front as well. So, yeah, it's very great to see that, as you said, people getting out and doing their own thing, and as a club, terrific without looking for any funding. Good to see.
Yeah, too right. Thank you very much, Councillor Wink. And yes, you've got to give credit where it's due. You like hearing about those that help themselves and makes you more inclined to want to help those that help themselves. I know this council does very well. We go to Councillor Oliver, business about notice.
No, Mr Mayor, nothing. No.
Thank you. Councillor Slade, business about notice.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Two small items. First of all, at the much talked about airport meeting, what air users. I came away tremendously impressed by a lot of things that I've seen at that stage, but one person absolutely gobsmacked me. This young fella sitting over in one of the corners and every now and again making a comment along the lines of highly technical, highly productive ideas. They were coming out, and I thought to myself, this guy must be a pilot of some sort. He must probably be an air marshal. And it wasn't, in fact, it was our manager of engineering. But it's just, and I do this without the slightest disrespect, because really, Rob, I just think that the image that you gave at that meeting, and it's not unique to that meeting, is something that you should be commended about, because we need our staff, our forward staff, to be able to discuss issues and forward issues the way that we would like them to. And so you've got top mark for that. So you're up there with the heavies, my friend. The second thing is just a quiet warning to anybody who does plan to take up Councillor McLaren's suggestion about going to the Active Ageing Committee. I went 3 years ago. I think I've been to a number of them, but I went 3 years ago, and I allowed the officer responsible to talk me into posing with some headdresses and all sorts of things. And if ever I've seen a horrible photograph that constantly reappears, it comes up every time I open a book. It's been used as a bookmark all over the place. So if you are approached by our beloved officer, then simply say to her, no thanks, I don't want my photo taken, but I'm delighted to be here. And as for that churlish comment about those who are ageing, some of us are not merely ageing, we have aged. But it's all right, Junior, we think that that's quite acceptable.
Thanks very much, Councillor Slade. That's very good. I'm going to look to find that photo again. Councillor Slade, can you turn your... thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go to Councillor Smith.
Yeah, it's very sad to hear about Carol Taylor being an old. She was I wouldn't say old. She was a employee of Mars many years ago. And like you said, very, very efficient. Anyway, it's just sad on that passing. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Smith, that's for sure. Going back to Councillor Slade's remarks about our manager of engineering services, I think, Councillor Slade, it is important that we do share those, because, we certainly can receive plenty of brickbats about the place, some deserved, some not. But it's very, very important that all of us that receive warm compliments about our staff, and frankly they're received every day, whether it's senior staff, whether it's indoor, outdoor, and they do come every day, and all of us need to get into that habit of passing that on. We really do. So, Mr. Engineer, my advice is that you lap up the compliments while they are there. Thank you. So no further business about notice, councillors. If not, motion please to receive our information paper, please. Councillor Reinhold, Deputy Mayor, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Probably no. The motion carried. Thank you. Councillor, are there any items that you wish to raise in relation to the information paper, please? Not. If not, in accordance with Section A of the Local Government Act 1993, I advise that there are several matters that have been confidential, and to have them considered, I require a motion that we move into closed session, please. Thank you, Councillor Slade. Deputy Mayor, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Thank you, members of the press and media officer. Thank you, councillors, members of senior staff. We resume into open council. Now, council, I advise that the following motions have been adopted in closed session, and those motions are as follows. The motion of Councillor Slade, Deputy Mayor Councillor Sinclair, moved into confidential at 6:15 p.m. The motion was carried. Minutes of the confidential Temora Traffic Committee meeting, the 11th of May, the motion of Councillor Smith and Councillor Slade was resolved that the reports be received and the motion was carried. The motion of Councillor Oliver and Councillor Smith, it was resolved that the reports and the recommendations as presented be adopted and the motion was carried. The minutes of the Confidential Assets and Operations Committee meeting on the 11th of May 2021, on the motion of Councillor Winkie and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that the reports be received and the motion was carried. The motion of Councillor Winkie and Councillor Smith, it was resolved that motion REP 21-531 to adopt the recommendation 60-2021. That motion was carried. The motion of Councillor Winkie and seconded Councillor McLaren, it was resolved that the recommendation 62-2021 be endorsed and the motion was carried. The motion of Councillor Winkie and Councillor Reinhold, it was resolved that the remainder of the reports and the recommendations as presented be adopted and the motion was carried. The General Manager's Performance Review Committee, on the motion of Councillor Smith and Councillor Slade, it was resolved that Council notes the report and the motion was carried. Travelling stock route, the motion of the Deputy Mayor Councillor Sinclair and seconded Councillor Judd, it was resolved that Council writes letters to the Chairman, the members of the Board of the Riverina Local Land Services and our member for Cootamundra, Ms Steph Cook, outlining our grave concerns and the process followed in relation to the travelling reserves grazing proposal. The motion was carried. The Polaris Street level crossing, on the motion of the Deputy Mayor Councillor Sinclair, seconded Councillor Winkie, it was resolved that Council Right to Transport for New South Wales requesting they undertake design and reconstruction of the Polaris Street level crossing to also include a pedestrian facility, and further that the correspondence indicates that safety concerns, particularly around heavy vehicle movements, in addition to the current rough pavement condition of this crossing. The motion was carried. Unnamed Road, Springdale, on the motion of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, and seconded Councillor Winkie, it was resolved that Council applied to the Geographical Names Board for Penfolds Lane. The motion was carried. Permanent road closure, on the motion of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, and seconded Councillor Winkie, it was resolved that Council sell the land to the interested parties, and that motion was carried. In relation to the new mobile stage, on the motion of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, and seconded Councillor Reinhold, it was resolved that Council explores options with the manufacturer for a local contractor to carry out repairs to the faults under warranty. And that motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Smith and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that Council moves the motions from closed business into open council, and that motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Reinhold and second Councillor Judd, it was resolved that Council moves out of closed council at 8:03 p.m. and into open council, and that motion was carried. Now please have a motion to adopt all those resolutions, please. Thank you, Councillor Slade. Councillor Oliver, move and second. All those in that opinion, please say aye. Aye. No. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, in relation to the fees and charges document in urgent business without notice, those fees and charges were inadvertently left out of our budget paper consideration. They have to be placed on public exhibition, and councillors will have those documents made available to them tomorrow, so we can read that, and we will have a special session to consider any amendments, etc., on the June committee day, and then at the June council meeting, council can formally adopt the fees and charges for the coming 12 months. So, could I please have a councillor move and second that we place the 2021-22 fees and charges on public exhibition, and further that we have a workshop on the June committee day to consider those fees and charges. Councillor Oliver, Councillor Smith, moved and seconded. There's further discussion. If not, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. And I do thank you very, very much for that. There being no further business, I thank you so much for your attendance, and again reflect on what an honour it was to have Mrs. James and her daughter with us here. It was really lovely. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.